Doomfist is almost certainly going to be changed to a tank. Supports are actually the strongest in 5v5. Zarya is pretty weak, but Blizzard thinks she's pretty strong. But also, Blizzard thought Sombra wasn't that strong, but now they think she is, and they're going to nerf her. We've got loads of info in this video, guys. This is about the Overwatch 2 playtest. The developers have done an AMA, and I'm going to break all of this down. It's going to be a good one, so grab a drink. It's going to be a long one. All right, let's do this. There's a lot of information to go over here, guys, so grab a drink. This is going to be a beefy video because we're going to break down all of the AMA that was held on competitive Overwatch over on Reddit. Now, this was something which nobody really knew this was going to happen. It just sort of came out of nowhere with an hour's notice. People could throw their questions in, and then we get to see developers respond, and yeah, we can break it down and see what they're talking about. Now, there's a few notable takeaways from this, stuff like classes or heroes which are going to change class. Like Doomfist is I guess the classic one here. He's been spoken about before, whether he would be changed to a tank. Blizzard is still looking at that. Well, we're going to get more information in this AMA about that. And also, supports are apparently the strongest class in the game right now, or hero role in the game right now, in the current Overwatch 2 build, which is kind of interesting. But there's loads of stuff we're going to go over here, guys. So yeah, let's do it. So we got this. It popped up, as you guys can see, 13 hours ago. I was very much in bed at the time. And it says, we're the Overwatch 2 hero design and balance team. And 1 hour from this post, we'll be here to answer your questions about the Overwatch League playtest videos that we recently released on YouTube. All right, good stuff. It's nice to get a bit more developer flavor to things that have, well, been released, especially when it's kind of, I don't want to say controversial because it's not, but when it's, there's a lot going on in those playtest videos, right? Do you foresee any heroes changing roles, or would you like to keep everyone where they are? Jeff Goodman responds to this. Of course, he's the lead hero designer on Overwatch and Overwatch 2. This is something we've been experimenting with and talking a lot about. No hero has moved roles yet, though, but we've started testing Doomfist as a tank, as previously mentioned. Doomfist's kit is full of crowd control effects and mobility, which makes it difficult to tune and balance him as a DPS in Overwatch 2. As a tank, though, he can keep those key properties to his kit, since those can fit nicely into a tank role, mostly the crowd control stuff. Of course, this means he'll be losing some damage and gaining some defenses. This is still being tested and iterated on. So, and by the way, guys, every time I say the word iteration or iterate, just if you've got a shot, take a shot. You'll be blasted, right? Any Blizzard content, they constantly go on about iteration. It's like this massive internal buzzword. I mean, of course, it basically just means keep refining, whatever you're doing. Let's reiterate it. Let's go over it. Let's go. Let's have another iteration. Let's go. Let's keep refining. So, yeah, it makes sense. But Blizzard, I tell you what, they do love that word. Anyway, I digress. Of course, this means he'll be losing some damage and gaining some defenses. This is still being tested and iterated on. That, by the way, that one doesn't count. So I don't have a ton of details on it yet, as it's still in the early stages. Some of the early feedback so far is that he's not really feeling like a tank without having at least one active defense button. His main defenses are passive at the moment. So that's something we'll probably try next. So there you go. They are actually looking at changing Doomfist into a tank. Now, on paper, this does make sense, right? He's highly mobile. He gets his shields when he slams in. Yeah, he's Doomfist, right? You want to keep the essence of the character. And I think what they're trying to say here is if he remains as DPS in Overwatch 2, he cannot have the same kit, which means he's not Doomfist anymore. So I think what they're trying to wrestle with here is, do we change him to a tank, and so he's got a similar play style to what he's currently got, or do we go some sort of radical redesign for DPS? Now, I'm going to go out there on a limb and say he probably will become a tank. And the reason why I'm going to say that is simply because look at Wrecking Ball, right? Look at even D.Va in some respects, but I guess Wrecking Ball is a better example. They can make Doomfist operate like Wrecking Ball. In a lot of ways, he almost kind of does operate like Wrecking Ball, even right now in current Overwatch. You're on your own. You don't generally play with a team with your Doomfist. You go on some crazy flank and kill someone and get the hell out. That's what you're kind of looking to do, and that's what Wrecking Ball kind of does. So you can see him fitting into that sort of dive tank role. Could be very interesting to see if they do that, though. But yeah, if I was a betting man, I probably would say that Doomfist probably will change role to tank, because I don't know how they keep him in his current state on as DPS in Overwatch 2, because it's just so easy to just flank. I mean, we've seen the maps, right? We've watched New York. We've seen clips of Monte Carlo, and it's just, even Rome, there's so many flank routes on these maps. It's just mental. So if you can flank, you're super powerful, which obviously means, Sombra, Tracer, and whatnot are pretty strong heroes as well. But yeah, Keep an eye on that one, guys. Jeff then responds to a bunch of quotes and breaks it down. If it was still 6v6 and he was an off tank, I can kind of see it. My guess is that he's going to use his CC to push enemies into bad positions or something. And Jeff says, yep, this can still be a big part of his kit. For example, one thing we're testing is for Rocket Punch to create an area knockback around a target he impacts, creating a new ability to knock multiple enemies away or into walls. I just hope I can still do rollouts and stuff, because that is what made Doomfist challenging and very fun to play. Doomfist's high mobility is a huge part of his kit, and that's not going to change. In fact, it's part of what makes him potentially a good tank, being able to initiate fights for your team. I mean, that there is basically, you know, I kind of said that in a much more long-winded way before we got onto this quote, but yeah, you can see that that's a way to preserve just the style of the hero, is to turn him into a tank almost. If he doesn't work as a tank in Overwatch 2, is he going to remain as a DPS with the same kit? This is tricky, to be honest. In a world where almost all crowd control has been removed from non-tanks, Doomfist would be a huge outlier. Maybe there is a world where he can exist as a DPS with less displacement and crowd control effects, but it would certainly be a challenge to make that work. So again, they're basically saying to us, get ready, guys. If you're a Doomfist main, you're going to be a tank in Overwatch 2, so you need to get ready for that. Basically, that's what's happening, right? But some cool info there on potential changes to Doomfist's abilities to make him a tank. Were ultimate generation rates lower than in the live game? It felt like there were less ults in general, although this might just be due to one less player and a 25% less ult charge from tanks. The biggest change here is the less ult game from tanks. We haven't actually modified ultimate costs outside of this change, and the implicit 5v5 changes, obviously. Having ults happen less often was something that we were targeting early on, and this tank change largely accomplished this by itself. This is something that's super easy to iterate on, take another shot, though, and I'm sure we will be tweaking it throughout the game's development and the beta. So yeah, you know, you get less ultimates because there's less tanks, give you less ult charge, and there's less tanks to shoot, basically. But they haven't changed any of the other figures for ults, which is kind of interesting, right? That's a nice little sort of, I guess, in a way, an elegant balance change to slow down ultimate charge rates, and again, help ultimates feel even more impactful when you get them. But of course, all heroes have got completely different innate ult charge rates anyway. So yeah, like it's an extra thing to help them balance, I guess. Was there any feedback from the pros playing the playtest that you didn't expect? Is there any you are already planning on acting on? Finally, there's been a bit of talk about Zarya's bubble cooldown in Overwatch 2 as it exists now. Has there been any talks of potential changes to this, such as async cooldown for each bubble? Yep, we had a good mix of things we expected and things we didn't expect. Probably the biggest surprise for me was just how good they thought Sombra was in this iteration. That's 3 shots. We have been playtesting those changes for at least a few weeks, and while she felt strong, she never really felt like she's taking over our games or anything. Obviously, when you get her in the hands of pros with amazing game sense and coordination, it makes confirming kills a lot easier. We've since focused a bit on her numbers and tweaked her down a bit to try and help keep her under control while still allowing her new kit to play well. So yeah, look, I mean, they've already nerfed Sombra. I actually think that's really interesting, because that there is game design in a bubble, where it's fine when we're playing it, guys. You know, hey, it's fine, it's cool. And then as soon as it hits the sort of live environment, I know it's not live, it was just pro players playing it, but, you know, arguably the best Overwatch players in the world got to sit down in their teams and play the game. Straight away, they're like, this is broken, it's super OP. And of course, things like that, they don't necessarily impact us as mere mortals playing the game, you know, normally, but eventually over time they do trickle down. So the devs can use it as an early warning system in some ways. And again, this just goes back to whenever anything is made for Overwatch, as soon as it went onto PTR or as soon as it went onto live, suddenly the amount of data they get within like an hour is way more than they've got within months of testing, you know, internally. And because also they're getting every single kind of skill range and everything. So tons of feedback. But interesting comment nonetheless, because they didn't think she was strong. I mean, we all laughed at her. I mean, honestly, as soon as we seen the remake information for Sombra, we were like, what the hell, this is crazy. They've literally gave her everything which she could possibly have, and this is OP, right? And yeah, it is OP, right? Or at least it's been confirmed to the devs that yes, she's strong, and they have already tuned her down, which is good news to see. Anyway, Jeff goes on to say, I think there is a good amount of iteration That's 4 shots. And still to be done with Zarya. I think Josh's already touched on some Zarya stuff in another thread, but I would definitely say she is not set in stone. She was always going to be a bit tricky to tweak in this 5v5 environment, and I'm sure she'll see some more changes over time. So here's the thing I think with Zarya. Zarya doesn't have mobility, but what they can do is give a kind of fake mobility by allowing her to project bubbles onto people. And that's what they're doing, right? But it's clearly not good enough because the bubbles are just... It's almost like the bubble needs changing in some ways. And I'm not sure how you do this. Like, do they change the bubble so it's sort of like... maybe it's on you for twice as long, but instead it just reduces a certain amount of damage coming in, so you still take damage with it on? Do they maybe change it in other ways? I mean, there was... maybe I'm going crazy here, but I'm pretty sure there was like an AoE bubble on experimental card a while back for Zarya, which probably, if you go back and look at the timelines, you can be like, hey, that's probably when they were messing around with ideas for remaking Zarya for 5v5 in Overwatch 2, right? But yeah, Zarya is still being worked on. She's always going to be kind of weird because she doesn't have mobility. She has really high damage for a tank when she's charged. She's got a unique sort of synergy between her bubbles and herself, where you've got to balance the incoming charge with bubble uptime. Again, that's another issue. So I think she's probably one of the most difficult tanks to kind of work out for them. But yeah, they're still working on Zarya. What is your philosophy on how tank buster heroes such as Reaper, Echo, Hanzo, and more should be approached in Overwatch 2? Is the role of tank buster obsolete when there is only one tank? So Josh, the hero designer who works with Jeff Goodman, says, I think it's important to have a concept of these high damage output heroes, with each having their own limitations and trade-offs, though not necessarily to fulfill the role of specifically taking out tanks and barriers. This is especially true with the format change to one tank per team in 5v5, because it can give players more options to respond to a variety of challenges than they may be trying to overcome in-game. More depth of team comps can lead to deeper gameplay. We have taken some tuning steps to make abilities like Storm Arrows and Echo's Beam less lethal against tanks, but still keep them powerful in other situations. So kind of just saying, like, yeah, there is a little bit of rebalancing that needs to go on with abilities that were maybe originally designed to blow tanks up because, well, yeah, there's only one tank now and they kind of need to be effective against other targets as well. And yeah, so a bit of a long-winded comment there, but yeah, at least they're looking at that kind of stuff. The change to 5v5 will of course require hero changes across the board, but I'm primarily interested as to how you're going to be looking at supports, with them having both one less tank to heal and one less tank to protect them. How are you tweaking the supports for the new game in broad strokes? Jeff Goodman responds to this and says, so far, broadly speaking, we've found that supports are often more safe in a 5v5 environment because there is one less tank trying to dive and take them out. There are instances where this isn't true, like Sombra and a Rework trying to assassinate them, or being sniped easier without a lot of barriers to hide behind. In those situations, sometimes it's a matter of just trying to position more carefully, or maybe Sombra just being a bit too OP right now. Initially, we were worried that supports without mobility to escape might be weak in the environment, but so far we've actually seen Zen Ana being very strong instead of weak, because of the nature of their offensive capabilities in a 5v5 environment. So here is actually kind of a nice little comment. Like, I really like that final paragraph. This idea of if you've got an offensive support, it actually does a lot better in this new 5v5 environment. And again, think about what this environment is. One less tank, so it's easier for you to keep the main tank alive because you don't have to worry about the other tank. Also, it means there's no other tank on the enemy team to come and dive you while their main tank is doing whatever. Also, the new maps are much bigger, right? And there's a lot of flanking potential. This means you're going to get Tracer right up your arse. You're going to get Doomfist, if he was still a DPS, up your... Well, you'd be dead instantly. Doomfist would just kill you. You wouldn't have the game of trying to fight off the Doomfist. He just comes off the top ropes and destroys you, and you are dead. But the point I'm trying to make is the maps are bigger. If you are self-sufficient in terms of healing and damage, you can, let's say, dissuade these flankers from pressuring you. This is why, and I'm going to go out there and say it, Baptiste is friggin' broken as hell in this 5v5 world. Baptiste is so strong. Like, you could even see this from the playtest when it was held. The Baptiste players were just absolutely killing everybody, pumping out loads of healing. It was just disgusting. And by that extension, so is Zen, because Zen is like the support that is DPS, really. he just sits there, and his main prerogative in life is just to do damage, right? Yeah, okay, he throws a heal, he throws a Discord orb, but he's just doing damage then. And then you look at Anna. Yeah, she's more healing slanted, but again, she's got offensive capabilities. She can put you to sleep. She can throw a nade in your face. Okay, Sleep Dart has been nerfed, but I think this is really interesting because we might be, I think it's just the culmination of all those things coming together. 5v5, bigger maps, flankers being more prominent, having self-sustain as a healer, having your passive as well as a healer, which heals you for health and you're not taking damage. But then also being able to heal yourself, being able to potentially crowd control enemies, and straight up just do damage to them, right? Of course, like I said, Batiste with the window, when he pops that and starts firing through it, he's just doing so much damage. It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, it's just mental. I'm not a very competitive player, but I'm curious to know if the playtests included any changes that were directly made in consideration of Overwatch 2's new heroes and how they might affect PvP. For instance, altering one of the current heroes in a way that compensates for a new counter they might have. So, the response to this is kind of short, but yeah, the answer is yes to that, really. I can't give out any specific details, but the answer is yes. There aren't too many instances of this, but also in some cases there are important balancing factors which haven't been changed yet in those playtest builds because of new mechanics and interactions with unreleased or reworked heroes. So yeah, they've got, what this says to me here is they've got reworked heroes ready to roll out that were not rolled out into that build. Maybe, they were buggy or there may be some sort of issue with them or whatever, but they're clearly designing with their full launch hero roster in mind, which is no surprise to anyone, I don't think. And they've always done this. They've made changes throughout the history of Overwatch because they knew a hero was going to come out a month later and would impact the game in a certain way. I suppose the most ridiculous case of this would have been when... Well, no, this is not even... I'm just going to throw it out there anyway. I don't think it's really anything to do with this, but when they launched Brig, I think they learned a big lesson with Brig because Brig was a counter to a... Well, Brig was to stop dive comp, and they built a hero to do that, and it did a little bit too well and ended up taking over the game in a lot of ways. Maybe an issue that they're still dealing with to this very day. But yeah, they always design balance with other things that we are not really exposed to yet because... They obviously are not going to go, oh, by the way, we've got 3 tanks that now do this and a DPS that does this and a support that does that. They know this, and so they're building with that in mind, which is just, that's just good. They should be doing that. How did the Bastion rework perform in these playtests compared to your expectations? It's funny, I actually tried to throw him some buffs right before the build went out, but I missed the deadline slightly. He has been pretty tricky to tune with his rework, but it was great to see him playtested by these great players. I feel like his new design is solid. It's just really a matter of getting his numbers into a good place now. Since this playtest, we've buffed him in a number of ways. He moves faster in sentry mode. His ult starts dropping faster, though the projectile moves slower, so you can still see it a bit more. His recon fire rate has been increased, and other buffs. That's actually increasing the recon fire rate was definitely needed because it was very slow and it looked really weird. Especially like I can see Havana in my head when he was being played on that map, and it was like boom, 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 boom. It didn't feel great. The tricky thing though is when playing him, it can feel like you still get thrashed pretty hard because he's such a large hero. He is very easy to target and hit with everything, especially when he gets discorded, etc. There is a lot we can tweak with that as well though, such as increasing his passive, Ironclad, to offer more protection while transformed. We also have new tuning knobs to help control his sentry mode, since it now has a cooldown and a duration associated with it. So what's interesting there, again, it's the final paragraph. It's looking at sentry mode and going, okay, this isn't really as strong as it needs to be. How do we fix this? Do we maybe shorten the duration and increase the damage of the weapon, right? That could be something they do. Do they make Bastion more tanky when he's in sentry mode so he can take more damage? Because, of course, he's moving slower. He is a big square target. He's very easy to throw everything out, as Jeff says. So, yeah, there are options for the dev team here, which I think is interesting. But, yeah, overall, I kind of like it. Like, the Bastion rework, yeah, all the numbers need changing, need sorting out. But the rework itself, I think, it's a damn sight better than what Bastion is. It's a more modern Bastion. It's a more playable Bastion. It's not just a stationary object in a game which is built around mobility, which was always a weird one for Bastion. Many pros involved in the matches described Zarya as particularly weak in the tank lineup. Some even suggested it felt like she was nerfed with the bubble cooldowns. Do you have any plans to adjust and rework her based on that feedback? And Josh comes in and says, this is an interesting one we're keeping an eye on, since internally the resounding feedback has been that Zarya is far in the other direction, and many think she is too strong and constantly high energy with being able to bubble herself twice. There's a couple of details that get overlooked with this new shared cooldown setup, in that the duration of the barriers have been extended slightly. We started at 3 seconds and it's gone down to 2.5, and the cooldown timer starts ticking immediately, unlike on live where the barrier has to be destroyed or time out first. So if the barrier isn't broken, your cooldown is coming up quicker than on live by some amount. The current internal cooldown is 9 seconds, and it's easy to tune that lower if she isn't performing well. But at some point it breaks down, and too many of those barriers quickly gets annoying to try to play against. The flexibility to barrier yourself twice in succession or an ally twice is also a powerful utility in itself. Using both barriers at exactly the same time is the worst case scenario for cooldown management, but sometimes necessary. Part of the interesting gameplay can be making that choice. So what I think is interesting here is you kind of see both the hero designers here, like having a bit of a different opinion. You've got Josh on the one hand saying, hey, you know what? I think this actually is better than what the pros think. And I think there is a cool mini game with bubble management and trying to keep your charge high. Then on the other hand, you've got Jeff maybe saying, maybe we need to look at this. Maybe we need to readdress the way the bubbles work. Maybe she needs, to be changed up to work slightly better as a tank in 5v5. It's all interesting stuff. Like, this is exactly what we like to see when the developers do talk about stuff. And it's just nice that, I guess the devs have been absolutely dying to talk about stuff for a while now. So it's good news that they can talk about stuff. And it's probably why these two have been giving us particularly detailed answers to these questions, which again is good stuff. We like going over this. It makes us feel more connected to the community, makes them feel more connected to the community, I guess, makes us feel more connected to the development of the game. It's just good stuff. It's good stuff. Are the devs content in how tanks performed in the pro play test and how they will play in their tests? Or is there a possibility for them to get more health? Does it feel like some of the tanks take damage too quickly? For example, does D.Va get demech too quickly? Or does it sometimes feel like a tank peeks a corner and gets instantly melted? And Josh says, we're certainly still experimenting with many different ways to ensure that tanks are powerful and satisfying to play in this new format. One of those experiments is seeing how far we can push tank base health up before the gameplay starts to break down. Some of the tank results have been surprising. D.Va specifically has ended up much more relatively powerful with only an extra dose of defense matrix energy. She has other changes as well, but that one did some heavy lifting. Roadhog as well had several experimental buffs along the lines of more damage reduction, resetting hook cooldowns, or even being able to cleanse himself of things like anti-heal that were taken out because he ended up just being so impactful at a base level, largely due to how valuable an early chain hook can be in 5v5. And I guess before I read the last paragraph off, that was my worry when I was looking through the gameplay we did of D.Va, and we took a look at Hog as well in that, where why would you play other tanks if you could just hook somebody and kill them instantly with Hog? Like in a 5v5 world, you only need one pick and that's it. You only really need one pick in a 6v6, but at least there was 2 of each class, right? In this, if you pull the tank in and destroy it, it's going to be devastating. Even if you just get anybody, it's going to be devastating, right? So I think Hog is going to be an issue with the tanks, to be honest. There's an argument for putting Hog into DPS, right? Swapping Hog and Doomfist, I suppose, in some ways. But again, maybe it would just be even more powerful then because I don't know. Good job I don't balance the game. Anyway, there are still some problematic mechanics we're working on to resolve, like Orb of Discord being nearly always on a tank, or Echo Duplicate choice coming down to being the best on the buffed up tanks. Yeah. Generally, we haven't found tanks to be getting blown up instantly unless they're hard overextending or aren't working with their team at all, in which case they should be vulnerable there. But of course, we'll have to see how that holds up at the professional level. So, or you Discord the tanks. You do this in live anyway. You throw it on the tank, generally on the main tank, and just try and burn them down, right? It's an easy target. In 5v5, there's only one tank. So, if there was a D.Va flying around, you would always throw Discord. This does kind of make me think that we're probably going to see a world where Zen is just in every game, because Zen is going to be so strong in Overwatch 2. And I'm already worried about the power of Zen, if I'm totally honest, because Discord on a target It's great in 6v6 and 5v5. Just simply looking at it like that, it's so much more powerful. And then, like throwing a Batiste as your other support or an Ana, someone who can do damage, it's just going to be disgusting. Yeah. Then you got to ask yourself, what about the other supports? What about Mercy, who's not really doing any damage unless she's just running around with a pistol out? And what about Moira? Again, yeah, you can do damage, but it's not on the same scale, is it, as a Batiste or a Zen? And yeah, what about Lucio? No, I don't know. It's just, it's anyway. Let's move on. Good God. Do the role passives really make sense from a balance point of view, or are they causing issues? Not just with ensuring unique hero identity, but also general game balance. E.g., I have always thought that one of the things that was a balance point in the support roster was that Mercy and Zen have a passive self-heal, but can't heal themselves under fire. Now, the supports that are able to heal themselves while under fire are additionally getting a passive self-heal. Is this something you have considered? Should Mercy and Zen also get a way to heal themselves while under fire? Example 2. Does it really make sense for a hero that slows you down, Mei, to also passively move faster than you? What about heroes that already moved faster? Are they now moving too fast? So far, the role passives have been great and helped quite a bit with both balance and hero design in general. Yep, this is something that we talked about quite a bit when working on these passives. We still want Mercy and Zen to be better at healing themselves, but we're just raising the minimum self-healing bar from 0 to some small amount. As we're designing support heroes, this is a constant question we struggled with in the past, and this role passive allows us more flexibility in designing future heroes. Currently, the movement bonus that a DPS hero gets is very small, but can still be impactful in these kind of situations you mentioned. Overwatch is a game that has an insane amount of mobility, so this change is somewhat of a drop in the bucket compared to what heroes can do with their abilities, especially for a hero like Mei, who has no other significant mobility options. We're still very much in testing on these, so we'll see what sticks and what needs to be changed or removed. I mean, I don't think there's too much I can really add to that. That's just, yeah, they're looking, yeah, you just answer the question, right? They're looking at what the question asks, so yeah. Extra, like, I think that the takeaway is they always go on about this as well. It's like extra tuning knobs, extra ways to fine tune and balance heroes. Because when you look at the wider picture of Overwatch, it's very complicated. There's all these different abilities. There's all these different maps. There's all these different team comps, and there's all these different levels of play. It's like, how do you fine tune these heroes to work well? And the more ways you can do that, the more options you've got of doing that. I think the balance devs clearly like that, because it means they can make little minor changes and it might fix problems instead of coming in with a sledgehammer and going, oh God, we've got dive comp, here's Brig. You know, all that type of thing. Okay, sit back, because this is a big one. This is a meaty comment, this is. What is your planned direction for the design balance of support heroes for making sure they are still impactful? Even in the 5v5 environment, supports are feeling very impactful. In many ways, they are actually more impactful than in Overwatch 1. Currently, I've read that like an idiot, but they're currently more impactful than in Overwatch 1, right? Whatever. You guys got eyes, you can look at the screen. In 5v5, there is less damage going around to both teams. Coupled with the ability to focus heavily onto your single tank, it becomes actually easier for both teams to sustain longer fights, which leads directly into the next question. It seems like you want to move away from healing considering the 25% healing reduction, but you also nerf the ability, nerf the utility with the removal of Brig's stun and cooldown increases on Ana's sleep dart. Some people have brought up that you may want supports to frag more, but why play a support over a DPS at that point? It's just very confusing what you're trying to sow. Right. There's two parts to this question, so let me break it down. The healing reduction was an attempt at combating the first question answer here, where sometimes fights can sustain for too long and it felt like it was too hard to confirm kills with one less player per team dealing damage. That, and we're trying to make poke damage more meaningful. Right now, even in Overwatch 1, sometimes it can feel like shooting an enemy is doing nothing but feeding your enemy support's ultimate charge. That said, we're already backed out of this specific change internally. We still have a similar goals and we're looking at other iterations. So there you go. There's confirmation that the 25% healing reduction is just gone, which I think is good. I didn't like that because it was just bad. Get rid of it, because it's very hard to communicate that to the player. It might be good for balance reasons, but how do you know? Like, it's like, oh, I'm doing less healing now. Oh, yeah, that's right. We're in combat. It's just crap. Get rid of that. But I think it had a 4-second cooldown on it or something. Crap. Get rid of it. The utility to nerf Brig's stun and Ana's sleep dart are more a response to trying to chill out crowd control effects from the game, and less about having them frag more. Ana's sleep dart is extremely strong, but it also is a great playmaking tool and leads to some sweet highlights and counterplay opportunities. I've seen more videos of clutch sleeps on a flying Pharaoh or Genji ult online than maybe any other support highlight. So it's not likely that we'll remove Ana's sleep dart, but the other non-tank crowd controls we've been taking a hard look at and trying to change them to remove the CC component and buff in other ways, which leads on to the next question. Also, is Brig's shield bash just a placeholder for now, or is the increased damage with no other effect on the final product? Now, if you guys watch my video on the sort of Brig rework, I did have the patch notes for this, and I will kind of go over some of them. Well, Jeff kind of does here, but he doesn't give the specific numbers because, of course, the numbers are going to change. But before we get into this, I'll tell you straight away. I think it was 12 yards, the shield bash distance, and I think it did 50 damage, and you could go through shields. And it would also trigger Inspire. So Inspire was off all damage now from your flail, whip shot, and your shield bash. Yeah, so let's go into what Jeff says. I think it wasn't super clear at all the changes that Brig's shield bash has gone through from just the video. Some notes on how it has changed. It lost its stun, that much was clear. It can go through barriers once again. This was removed a while ago in a balance patch to try and address concerns with Brig versus Ryan and Orisa. This was very strong early GOATs meta. I know this very well because the Team UK absolutely destroyed USA in the World Cup with this, because you could bash through Reinhardt barriers, which is so stupid. So you would basically bash shatter. And so, yeah, your Brig would bash the enemy Reinhardt. He drops his barrier, then your Reinhardt would shatter the whole team. You'd win the fight. And we were very good at that. It deals more damage. Once again, this damage was all but removed in a previous balance patch to try and reduce her stun combos. But now it can retain this damage. So this was 50 damage as of the playtest build. Its damage now triggers Inspire. Initially, I thought this might feel like a minor change, but upon playtesting, I found this to be extremely helpful. You can shield bash enemies to trigger Inspire and move to safety without ever lowering your shield. It travels much further, almost twice as far. It is much more useful as a mobility tool in this version. It has a much reduced cooldown. It's not really important how much of a cooldown reduction it has right now, as it's likely to change as we iterate, that's the 5th shot, on the balance of the game. But what is important is that having reduced cooldown combined with the ability to travel much further makes her generally a lot more mobile, so she can escape or be aggressive a lot more easily as needed. And remember, you shield bash someone, you're healing yourself because you've just procced Inspire, and you just, yeah, I mean, this again just goes back to the whole idea of making heroes mobile in Overwatch 2. You've got bigger maps, you've got 5v5, you need to move around more, everyone's just naturally going to be spread out more. You can see that this is a design philosophy of Overwatch 2. They do not want death balls. They don't want you in a big group running around the map, which is what we've seen a lot in Overwatch throughout the game's history. They want it to be more spread out. Gives more potential for individual plays, I guess, and stuff like that. So, yeah, like I actually kind of, I like what they're doing with Brig. I honestly like what they're doing with Brig here. I think this is good. And I can't wait to play it. What was your thought process behind adding the 25% healing reduction for the first 4 seconds, or however long it was, even if you aren't keeping it in? Were supports really that busted in playtests that you tried without it? If so, can you give us some reasonable insight on how you're planning to solve this issue in a way that wouldn't be a hard nerf to all support heroes? What we found from our initial playtesting is that generally support heroes have become the most impactful role by a wide margin, with overall less incoming damage on the field, and with the reduction of a tank, fewer high health pool targets to try and keep up. This led to the average time to kill becoming much higher, and many fights stalling out longer than we'd like. Not only healing output, but utilities like Mercy Resurrect, and a Sleep Dart, Biotic Grenade, Zenyatta, Discord, etc. are even more impactful in a 5v5 world. The general approach was to reduce healing output by some amount, but we don't really know what the amount is on an individual level. A little peek behind the scenes for game dev. The blanket passive heal reduction with a new concept of being in combat is a shortcut for us as designers to find an approximate value of what it should be changed by since to adjust the value from playtest to playtest. We only have to change that one number rather than edit every healing script value individually. The reason for the in combat rule was mainly because we already know from earlier tuning in Overwatch's history that when healing is too low, Mercy, Zen, Lucio especially, it's annoying to try and heal large health pool tanks between fights. We've considered adding bonus heal multiplier to the tank role passive, but it also contributes to the issue of fights stalling out as mentioned above. It could still happen in some form though. So again, a great comment there. I like that. Like sort of an elegant way of making wholesale healing changes is just by throwing in a global rule, which is like, yeah, 25% less healing. And then we can start tuning it and see what level we need to get healing down. Then we can change that on all of the heroes if we need to. It's just faster than going through and editing every single value every time they want to do a playtest. Now, yeah, I think this is good. And what I'm really excited about is we are starting to get more Overwatch 2 stuff now. This is going to sound kind of grim and kind of dark, but you guys know I've not been very well. The end of last year, pretty much up until a couple of months ago this year, I've had a really rough time with my health, and it couldn't have come at a better time because Overwatch literally was doing nothing. And now it seems to be picking up again, and I'm getting better. So I'm like, nice one. Well done, Blizz. But yeah, this is good, right? This means that we are gearing up for something, but we do know there is a deadline. We know that next year, we know that in April, the Overwatch League will be played on Overwatch 2. So there is a deadline for Overwatch 2 to have some sort of functional multiplayer by that time. In what form that ends up being in, I guess we'll have to wait and see. If every hero is in it, again, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'll tease another video that I've been working on, guys, and it just made sense to put this video out before I put this video out, well, this other video out I'm about to tell you about, which is just my thoughts on Overwatch 2 based off what we've seen from the playtest, because I've watched those videos back numerous times now, and we've got more good information in this AMA on Reddit, so I can kind of form a little bit of a better picture and kind of give my thoughts on it. But I guess the short version of it is I am looking forward to seeing what happens with 5v5. But you guys have got to remember, the main thing for Overwatch 2 is meant to be the PvE, and we've not seen any of that. So when you see comments of people going, oh my god, it just looks the same. Yeah, well, it will, because they're only showing us the PvP, and it's meant to be the same, because as far as we know, Overwatch 1 players can play Overwatch 2 PvP for free. So it's got to be the same. It's not going to be different, right? Not going to totally change the game. It has to be similar, right? All right, guys. Thank you for staying with me, if you managed to stay with me, throughout this entire video. It is a juicy video, a lot of information, big beefy video. I do like going over these AMAs, especially when we get spicy bits of information. I can't wait to see what they do next. I can't wait to see what news we get next. I think probably the next major thing is the rename of McCree. We're probably going to find out what his name will be at some point. Of course, we've got Halloween running as well right now. So yeah, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below, guys. I can't wait to read the comments on this because, of course, like, we're going into a brave new world, and we're starting to get insight from the developers finally, so we can start speculating, we can start discussing what is going on, and that is good stuff. All right, guys, thank you for watching the video, and I will catch you on the next one. And remember, you can follow me on absolutely everything, which is Stylosa. So on Instagram, TikTok, and all of that stuff, and Twitter. And I don't know why I said Twitter like that. I've lost my voice. Yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Toodaloo.